Black Mask was a pulp magazine first published in April 1920 by the journalist H.L. Mencken and the drama critic George G. Nathan. It is most well known today for launching the hard-boiled crime subgenre of mystery fiction, publishing now classic works by Dashiell, Hammett, Raymond, Chandler, Earl Stanley Gardner, Cornell Woolridge, Paul Kane, Carroll, John Daly, and others. Early years, 1920 to 26. The magazine was one of several money-making publishing ventures to support the prestigious literary magazine, The Smart Set, which Mencken edited and which had operated at a loss since at least 1917. Under their editorial hand, the magazine was not exclusively a publisher of crime fiction, offering, according to the magazine, the best stories available of adventure, the best mystery and detective story, the best romances, the best love stories, and the best stories of the occult. The magazine's first editor was Florence Osborne, credited as F.M. Osborne. After 8 issues, Mencken and Nathan considered their initial $600 investment to have been sufficiently profitable, and they sold the magazine to its publishers, Eltinge Warner and Eugene Crow, for $12,500. The magazine was then edited by George W. Sutton, 1922 to 1924, followed by Philip C. Cody. Cody had significant interests and expertise in the publishing world, serving as vice president of Warner Publications, publishers of such mass-market magazines as Field and Stream, and pulp genre publications such as Black Mask. Under Cody's editorship, the content of Black Mask became more sensationalist. Cody, who had the keen sense for what appeared to the public marketplace, focused on what had the most reader allure. Under Cody, the stories chosen for publication were longer, more intricately plotted, and strewn with more blood, guts, gore, and sex. Cody served as both circulation editor and general editor from 1924 to 1926. In 1926, Joseph Shaw took over the editorship. Contributing authors. Early Black Mask contributors of note included J.S. Fletcher, Vincent Sturrett, and Herman Peterson. Shaw, following up on a promising lead from one of the early issues, promptly turned the magazine into an outlet for the growing school of naturalistic crime writers, led by Carroll John Daly. Daly's private detective, Race Williams, was a rough-and-ready character with a sharp tongue, establishing a model for many later acerbic private eyes. Black Mask later published stories by the profoundly influential Dashiell Hammett, creator of Sam Spade, and the Continental Op, and other hard-boiled writers who came in his wake, such as Raymond Chandler, Earl Stanley Gardner, Paul Kane, Frederick Niebuhr, Frederick C. Davis, Raoul F. Whitfield, Theodore Tinsley, Todd Hunter Ballard as W.T. Ballard, Dwight V. Babcock, and Roger Torrey. The best-known contributors to Black Mask were mostly men, but the magazine also published works by many female crime writers, including Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Catherine Brocklebank, Sally Dixon Wright, Florence M. Pettit, Marion O'Hearn, Kay Krause, Francis Beck, Tia Devitt, and Dorothy Dunn. Crime fiction made up most of the magazine's contests, but Black Mask also published some Western and general adventure fiction. The magazine was successful, and many of the writers whose work appeared in its pages, such as Hugh B. Cave, went on to greater commercial and critical success. Writer George Harmon Cox created Casey, crime photographer. for the magazine. The character became a media franchise, appearing in novels, films, radio and television programs, comic books and theatrical productions. Black Mask covers were usually painted by Fred Kraft or J.W. Schlechter. Shaw gave Arthur Rodman Bowker a monopoly on creating illustrations for the interior of the magazine. Decline and revival. Black Mask reached a sales peak in the early 1930s, but then interest began to wane under increasing pressure from radio, the cinema and rival pulp magazines. In 1936, refusing to cut writers' already meagre pay, Shaw resigned and many of the high-profile authors abandoned the magazine with him. Shaw's successor, Fanny Ellsworth, 1936 to 1940, managed to attract new writers to Black Mask, including Cornell Woolrich, Frank Gruber, Max Brand and Steve Fisher. However, from the 1940s on, Black Mask was in decline, despite the efforts of a new editor, Kenneth S. White, 1940 to 1948. The magazine in this period carried the work of John D. MacDonald. Henry Steger then edited Black Mask anonymously until it ceased publication in 1951. In 1953, Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine bought Black Mask magazine and turned it into a special department which features harder-edge works of crime, noir and private eye writers. Black Mask ceased to exist in EQMM in the 1970s, but was reinstated in 2008 and continues to run today. In 1985, the magazine was revived as The New Black Mask, featuring noted crime writers James Elroy, Michael Collins, Sarah Paretsky, and Bill Pronzini, as well as Chandler and Hammett reprints. Edward D. Hoch praised the revived Black Mask, stating in the book Encyclopedia Mysteriosa that it came close to reviving the excitement and storytelling pleasure of the great old pulp magazines. As a result of a legal dispute over the rights to the name Black Mask, the magazine ceased publication in 1987. It was revived as a short-lived magazine entitled A Matter of Crime. Original copies of the Black Mask are highly valued among pulp magazine collectors. Issues with stories by Chandler and Hammett are especially coveted and command high prices. I haven't killed anyone. They won't let me. Let's stick around a while. This excitement has put us behind in our drinking. Only you, darling. Lanky brunettes with wicked jaws. How do you feel? Terrible. I must have gone to bed sober. Samuel Dashiell Hammett, May 27, 1894 to January the 10th, 1961, was an American writer of hard-boiled detective novels and short stories. He was also a screenwriter and political activist. Among the characters he created are Sam Spade from The Maltese Falcon, Nick and Nora Charles, The Thin Man, and The Continental Op from Red Harvest and The Dane Curse, and the comic strip character Secret Agent X9. Hammett is regarded as one of the very best of the mystery writers. In his obituary in the New York Times, he was described as the dean of the hard-boiled school of detective fiction. The problem with putting 2 and 2 together is that sometimes you get 4, and sometimes you get 22. Time included Hammett's 1929 novel Red Harvest on its list of the 100 best English language novels published between 1923 and 2005. In 1990, the Crime Writers Association picked 3 of his 5 novels for their list of the top 100 crime novels of all time. 5 years later, The Maltese Falcon placed second on the top 100 mystery novels of all time, as selected by the Mystery Writers of America. Red Harvest, The Glass Key, and The Thin Man were also on the list. His novels and stories also had a significant influence on mystery films, including the style that came to be known as film noir. If you actually were as innocent as you pretend to be, we'd never get anywhere. Career and personal life. Hammett was first published in 1922 in the magazine The Smart Set, known for the authenticity and realism of his writing. He drew on his experiences as a Pinkerton operative. Hammett wrote most of his detective fiction while he was living in San Francisco in the 1920s. Streets and other locations in San Francisco are frequently mentioned in his stories. He said, "I do take most of my characters from real life." His novels were some of the first to use dialogue that sounded authentic to the era. "I distrust a man that says when. If he's got to be careful not to drink too much, it's because he's not to be trusted when he does." The bulk of his early work, featuring a nameless private investigator, the Continental Op, appeared in leading crime fiction pulp magazine Black Mask. Both Hammett and the magazine struggled in the period when Hammett became established. Because of a disagreement with editor Philip C. Cody about money owed from previous stories, Hammett briefly stopped writing for Black Mask in 1926. He then took a full-time job as an advertisement copywriter for the Albert S. Samuels Company, a San Francisco jeweler. He was wooed back to writing for the Black Mask by Joseph Thompson Shaw, who became the new editor in the summer of 1926. Hammett dedicated his first novel, Red Harvest, to Shaw, and his second novel, The Dane Curse, to Samuels. Both these novels and his third, The Maltese Falcon, and fourth, The Glass Key, were first serialized in Black Mask before being revised and edited for publication by Alfred A. Knopf. The Maltese Falcon, considered to be his best work, is dedicated to his wife Josephine. For much of 1929 and 1930, he was romantically involved with Nell Martin, a writer of short stories and several novels. He dedicated The Glass Key to her, and in turn she dedicated her novel Lovers Should Marry to him. In 1931, Hammett embarked on a 30-year romantic relationship with the playwright Lillian Hellman. Though he sporadically continued to work on material, he wrote his final novel in 1933, more than 25 years before his death. The Thin Man is dedicated to Hellman. Why he moved away from fiction is not certain. Hellman speculated in a posthumous collection of Hammett's novels. I think, but I only think, I know a few of the reasons. He wanted to do new kind of work. He was sick for many of those years and getting sicker. In the 1940s, Hellman and he lived at her home, Hardscrabble Farm, in Pleasantville, New York. The French novelist André Gide thought highly of Hammett, stating, "I regard his Red Harvest as a remarkable achievement, the last word in atrocity, cynicism, and horror." Dashiell Hammett's dialogues, in which every character is trying to deceive all the others, and in which the truth slowly becomes visible through a fog of deception, can be compared only with the best in Hemingway. A veteran of both world wars, Hammett is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Archive. Many of Hammett's papers are held by the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas at Austin. This archive includes manuscripts and personal correspondence, along with a small group of miscellaneous notes. The Irvin Department of Rare Books and Special Collections at the University of South Carolina holds the Dashiell Hammett family papers. Raymond Chandler, often considered Hammett's successor, summarized his accomplishments in his essay, The Simple Art of Murder. Raymond Chandler. Hammett gave murder back to the kind of people that commit it for reasons, not just to provide a corpse, and with the means at hand, not with hand-wrought dueling pistols, curare and tropical fish. He is said to have lacked heart, yet the story he thought most of, himself, the glass key, is the record of a man's devotion to a friend. He was spare, frugal, hard-boiled, but he did over and over again what only the best writers can ever do at all. He wrote scenes that seemed never to have been written before. Raymond Thornton Chandler, July the 23rd, 1888 to March 26, 1959, was an American-British novelist and screenwriter. In 1932, at the age of 44, Chandler became a detective fiction writer after losing his job as an oil company executive during the Great Depression. His first short story, Blackmailers Don't Shoot, was published in 1933 in Black Mask. His first novel, The Big Sleep, was published in 1939. In addition to his short stories, Chandler published 7 novels during his lifetime. An 8th, in progress at the time of his death, was completed by Robert B. Parker. All but the book Playback have been made into motion pictures, some more than once. Chandler had an immense stylistic influence on American popular literature. He is a founder of the hard-boiled school of detective fiction, along with Dashiell Hammett, James M. Cain, and other Black Mask writers. The protagonist of his novels, Philip Marlowe, like Hammett's Sam Spade, is considered by some to be synonymous with private detective. Both were played in films by Humphrey Bogart, whom many consider to be the quintessential Marlowe. The Big Sleep placed second on the Crime Writers Association poll of the 100 best crime novels. Farewell, My Lovely, 1940, The Lady in the Lake, 1943, and The Long Goodbye, 1953. Also made the list. The latter novel was praised in an anthology of American crime stories as arguably the first book since Hammett's The Glass Key, published more than 20 years earlier, to qualify as a serious and significant mainstream novel that just happened to possess elements of mystery. Chandler was also a perceptive critic of detective fiction. His The Simple Art of Murder is the canonical essay in the field. In it he wrote, "Down these mean streets a man must go who is not himself mean, who is neither tarnished nor afraid. The detective must be a complete man and a common man, and yet an unusual man. He must be, to use a rather weathered phrase, a man of honor, by instinct, by inevitability, without thought of it and certainly without saying it. He must be the best man in his world and a good enough man for any world." In straitened financial circumstances during the Great Depression, Chandler turned to his latent writing talent to earn a living, teaching himself to write pulp fiction by analysing and imitating a novelette by Earl Stanley Gardner. Chandler's first professional work, Blackmailers Don't Shoot, was published in Black Mask magazine in 1933. According to genre historian Herbert Room, Chandler, who worked slowly and painstakingly, revising again and again, had taken 5 months to write the story. Earl Stanley Gardner could turn out a pulp story in 3 or 4 days and turned out an estimated 1,000. His first novel, The Big Sleep, was published in 1939, featuring the detective Philip Marlowe speaking in the first person. The University of Oxford preserves some of Chandler's papers in the archives of the Bodleian Library. These include correspondence with his publisher, Hamish Hamilton Limited. Later, life and death. Sissy Chandler died in 1954 after a long illness. Heartbroken and drunk, Chandler neglected to inter her cremated remains, and they sat for 57 years in a storage locker in the basement of Cypress View Mausoleum. Chandler regained his US citizenship in 1956 while retaining his British rights. In the year before his death, he was elected president of the Mystery Writers of America. Reputation. Critics and writers, including W.H. Auden, Evelyn Waugh, and Ian Fleming, greatly admired Chandler's prose. In a radio discussion with Chandler, Fleming said that Chandler offered some of the finest dialogue written in any prose today. Contemporary mystery writer Paul Levine has described Chandler's style as a literary equivalent of a quick punch to the gut. Chandler's swift-moving, hard-boiled style was inspired mostly by Dashiell Hammett, but his sharp and lyrical similes are original. The muzzle of the Luger looked like the mouth of the 2nd Street Tunnel. He had a heart as big as one of Mae West's hips. Dead men are heavier than broken hearts. I went back to the sea steps and moved down them as cautiously as a cat on a wet floor. He was as crazy as a pair of waltzing mice, but I liked him. I felt like an amputated leg. He was about as inconspicuous as a tarantula on a slice of angel food. Chandler's writing redefined the private eye fiction genre, led to the coining of the adjective Chandleresque, and inevitably became the subject of parody and pastiche. Yet the detective Philip Marlowe is not a stereotypical tough guy, but a complex, sometimes sentimental man with few friends, who attended university, who speaks some Spanish, and sometimes admires Mexicans and blacks, and who is a student of chess and classical music. He is a man who refuses a prospective client's fee for a job he considers unethical. Legacy. The intersection of Hollywood Boulevard and Cahuenga Avenue in Hollywood, California, is named Raymond Chandler Square, a tribute both to the author and to the belief that Philip Marlowe's office was located in Security Trust and Savings at the northeast corner of this intersection. In 1994, the square was designated Los Angeles Historical Cultural Monument 597. The Lifetime Achievement Award of the Noirin Festival is named the Raymond Chandler Award. In 1991, Fulbright program gave out a Raymond Chandler Mystery Writing Award. And in 1994, they gave out a Raymond Chandler Award. The end. I'm an occasional drinker. The kind of guy who goes out for a beer and wakes up in Singapore with a full beard.